What if the measure of leadership wasn't how much we achieve, but how intentionally we live, or how intentionally and generously we give? In a world that glorifies busyness, true leadership just might begin with slowing down, choosing purpose, and giving from an overflow, not from exhaustion. I don't know. What do you think? Well, listen, come on, let's get into it. Welcome back to Transformation Station, where we explore the moments and mindsets that fuel growth, purpose, and authentic leadership. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and today's episode is something that we don't talk about enough. That's right, we're talking about intentional living and giving as a leader. And in this episode, we're going to unpack what it really means to live and lead with purpose, not just chasing success, but defining significance. Now, I'm super excited because we have an amazing guest today. Let me tell you a little bit about Larry. Larry Onan is a 1966 graduate of the University of Colorado. He and his wife, Pat, served as full-time staff of Cru Campus Crusade for Christ for 18 years. And during this time, Larry dedicated 13 years to developing and overseeing the accelerated growth of many fund development initiatives. Larry is the author of Giving Yourself Away and Intentional Living and Giving, Transformation Station. Why don't you welcome right now, Larry? We welcome you to the Transformation Station Leadership Podcast.
Oh, Adrienne, it's fun to be with you today. Thank you very much. I just looking forward to this.
Oh, absolutely. So excited to have you here. Okay, so Larry, I want to start off right away because I've been looking forward to this episode where we get a chance to talk about intentional living and giving as leaders. But what has come to me is this question. Let's start off with this. From your experience, Larry, why do so many people today struggle with doubt, fear, insecurity, confusion, lack of direction? I know this is a lot, but why do so many people struggle with all of these things, with hopelessness?
Well, let me ask this other question in return. Why do people go to a carnival and ride the bumper cars where they're going to be smashed in a circle for 15, 20 seconds, maybe 5 minutes? And all you're doing is going around and around in a circle and being hit by somebody else. I did that as a kid. That was a fun thing to do, but we were glad to get off of that because it was a knee jerk and a head jerk. And a bumper car experience does not define where you're going. All you're doing is spinning, and you're letting somebody else govern and impact your life by them hitting you or you hitting somebody else. I believe a lot of leaders today don't really know their purpose. They don't know why they're existing today. They don't know their job description. And they get frustrated and defeated because the moment responsibility does not come out right. They miss it. And then they don't know why. Or maybe they thought they were going to have a really good day. And I'll guarantee you, every day is full of curves. There is no day that's going to go like you want them to go. So I believe a lot of people are living not realizing how everything fits together. And in that vacuum, they feel like this life is like a little animal in a wheel. And I'm just chasing myself. Isn't there a way to get off and have purpose? And I say, yes, there is a way. But I think many people really are just kind of lost in this shuffle of life and don't know what their purpose is. And I really discovered purpose. And when you discover purpose, I mean, I've been around the block for 50 years doing what I'm doing. But even this morning at 5 o'clock, when I got up in the morning, I stretched my ankles. They tell me at my age, I got to move my ankles before I walk. And I thought, okay, today is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and I will be glad in it. And there's purpose for my life today. That's why I'm still alive. I woke up with the expectation that I was going to fulfill a purpose. I wasn't just existing. I don't believe in surviving. I believe in thriving.
I love this 1000%. So here in Transformation Station, we always take some moments during the podcast to give our viewers and our listeners an opportunity to reflect. And Larry, you've shared some really serious gems with us where you talked about understanding our purpose. And it reminds me of this. Sometimes we get disconnected from faith, from meaning and vision. And to all of our leaders who are listening and watching right now, this is a moment for assessment. Like, stop and ask yourself, are you disconnected from your purpose? Can you clearly see what your purpose, your calling is? Are you disconnected from your faith, from the meaning of life? This is, as Larry is saying, sometimes some of the reasons why we walk around or we go through life struggling with doubt and fear and other things. The other thing, Larry, from personal experience, sometimes we lose the practice of inner stillness. I know for me as a leader, I've been leading for over 2 decades. It's busy. Like we're just you're going from one thing to the next thing, right? Okay, we accomplished that mission. It's time for the next one. We accomplished that goal. It's time for the next one. And in the midst of the fast pace and the moving, many times we lose ourselves because we lose the practice of just being still.
Well, there's a biblical mandate for that. David, I think, was the one that wrote it. Be still and know that I am God. Well, if you don't want to think about God, then you're stuck because there's an Almighty that's watching and is governing. He's outside of our box, but God wants us to be still and reflect on him. I walk a couple days a week, couple of miles. That's part of my routine. I swim 45 minutes, 3 days a week. And in those moments, a lot of times is when I pray and listen because I can't do anything else in the pool but do strokes. I can't, when I'm out walking, it's just moving it for 45 minutes. So I get good body my energy goes in that regard. But I think all the time when I start that off, okay, this is my time to be still. I don't listen to the phone. A lot of times I don't listen to a podcast. I just be still. I think we filled our life so full of noise that we don't know what it's like to be still.
Well, yes.
I live alone. My wife died of a glioblastoma brain tumor about 10 years ago. So people have often thought, well, Larry, how can you survive in your house alone? Well, I do have television and I do have radio and I do have internet and all that kind of stuff. But there's times when I need to turn off everything. And that's an intentional decision that I made because you know what our nature is? Noise.
Noise, yeah.
If I go for a walk, what have I got to do? Turn on a podcast. If I go swimming, I've got to talk to the people next to me, that are lapping as well. Now, we don't talk a lot, but we don't like it to be quiet. And yet Scripture tells us to be still and know. And being still means you just stop everything in your brain. Just be still. I want people to be still and know that, first of all, they're not here by accident. You're there for a very definite purpose. I think people sometimes confuse purpose and their job description at a company or a business and thinking that is their purpose. No, that's the way you're fulfilling your purpose, but that's not your purpose. That's right. I'm a strong believer that God didn't, it's not a mistake that you and I are talking today. I am following through on what God's ordained for me to do, and you're doing the same thing. So we connect and we say, well, that's a part of our business. But there's really another higher picture of that picture is God wanted us to have a conversation today. And we've got to be ready to embrace what he's got for us, even sometimes when we don't like it.
I love it. I love it.
The other day I went swimming at 5 a.m. I swim at 5 a.m. every morning, 3 days a week, summer or winter. I'm in the pool. Okay. That's just 20 years I've done that. There's a gate on the parking lot to the pool. I live in a home development that has a pool, and I've never been to the pool when that gate's been locked. Okay. So this morning or about a week ago, I drove up to the gate and I hit the gate because I've never seen it closed. It was painted dark green, 5 a.m. in the morning. It's dark out there. And I hit the gate because I wasn't careful to observe something that I'd never seen before. That hitting the gate messed up my vehicle big time. And now I've got to deal with the consequences of my inattention to
Mm-hmm.
deal with a car that now needs repairs.
Yes.
It didn't hurt the gate, it hurt me. Okay.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
I was not expecting that. That was a
Yes.
curve that was thrown to me. And I said to the Lord, okay, now what are you going to do as a result of breaking your car?
Mm.
Because I don't own that car. My Heavenly
Mhm.
Father owns my car. I don't own anything, Adrienne. So my view in life is that my Father owns it all. Everything is his. And I am simply a steward taking care of what he's entrusted me with. So I don't have stuff of my own. I'm using things that were entrusted to me, and he expects me to take care of it. My first thought is, what are you going to do to fix your car? Now, that seems like a strange thing to say at 5 a.m., but I was irritated that I hit it. Yes. That
Mhm.
was my inability to see a dark green fence and a dark green kind of a garden area. But it, rather than falling apart and being frustrated by the gate being closed, and there were circumstances for that, I took responsibility. And the next thing I did when they opened is call the people and say, I hit your gate this morning. Now,
Yes.
I've still got to pay the consequences. I got to get a truck fixed, an SUV fixed. But I am accepting the curves because that's a part of how I grow spiritually. If you
Mhm.
think that life is going to be easy peasy and you were just going to slide through life, don't kid yourself. You're not growing much. It is
Mhm.
when you are facing the challenges that you grow the most.
Mhm. Very
And
true.
unless you're exercising your faith muscles and operating in a sense of spiritual accountability, you're going to find life pretty boring and pretty frustrating because life is full of curves.
I love this. I love this. So that then reminds me of this principle that we can share with our leaders today, which simply says, what truth might I hear if I slow down enough to listen? And through what Larry just shared with us, he slowed down after he hit the fence to listen, to listen. And as he listened to the Lord, as he listened to his heart and his spirit, as he took time to see what is really true about his situation, then he was able to make wise decisions, to be a man of integrity, to go and talk to the neighbors, and to walk forward, trusting and believing. So to the leaders right now, we give you another reflection moment here. Ask yourself this question: what truth might I hear if I slow down enough to listen? And we want to invite you right now, slow down, take a moment, pause, and listen. So, Larry, let me ask you this question. Why do many people start with a clear purpose and then do foolish things that mess up their lives? And Larry, is there a way, from your experience of living, is there a way to keep from messing up?
Well, I'll phrase it this way. You know, the book that I recently wrote was called Intentional Living and Giving. And by intentional, I mean you've got to decide every day and sometimes 3 or 4 times a day that I'm going to choose the path of direction that God's laid out for me. When we forget that we've got purpose, we get confused. We go wandering. It's really easy to, the other day I missed an appointment completely. I chair a board of an organization. And I'd been on a few podcasts. I'd done a number of other things. It was 5:30 at night. I hung up the phone. I was finished. I went down and sat down. I thought, I'm going to take a break. And I fell asleep in my easy chair. And at 9 o'clock that night, I didn't wake up then, but at 9 o'clock at night, somebody texted me and they say, are you okay? I had
Mm,
forgotten to show up at a very important board meeting.
mm,
Why? I just had checked out of life. Now, there's a place where we need to check out and be still and know that we're God, but there's also responsibility. I forgot to look at my calendar at the end of that couple of hours of busyness, realizing that I had to be someplace else that I knew I had to be at.
mm,
And so sometimes we've got to calibrate during the day to say, this is why I'm all about. I don't want to get lost in the weeds. And if you don't have your antenna up, you're going to get lost in the weeds pretty easy. Life is so complex, and what you hear on the news, no matter where you're at in the world, is so depressing. We can be off on a trail pretty soon and forget that we have something important to accomplish. And you're
mm,
not being still at that point. You're just being totally confused. And it was
mm.
embarrassment to death to miss a board meeting that the whole board was there and Larry Onan, the chair, never showed up.
I see. I see. Thirsty. Oh, listen, that brings me to this thought as well. To our listeners and viewers, I want to ask you this question. We want to ask you this question. What's one small practice you can return to this week that keeps your life anchored to your purpose? Just return back to it. Return back to it. But pause right now and don't just ask yourself the question, but answer the question as well. So, Larry, as I think about this topic, what keeps coming to me is this word fear, right? They say fear stands for false evidence appearing real many times, but
Mhm.
fear often keeps people from moving forward, keeps leaders from moving forward, right? So, what role does intentional play in helping people break? What role does intentional giving play in helping people break through fear?
I tell you, I was given the gift of a phrase years ago that has helped me and many other people survive. I
Mm-hmm.
had a huge challenge in front of me, and I went to my superior and I said, I don't know how we're going to go about doing this, and this is a little bit overwhelming to me. And I was kind of copping out. I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Larry, you've always got the freedom to fail. Now, up till then, I saw failure as something that I could beat myself up for. He
Mm-hmm.
was giving me a sense that freedom to fail says if you don't quite do it right that time, all you got to do is tweak it and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always do everything perfect the first time, but we sometimes, out of fear, don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right now,
Mm-hmm.
just before we had our conversation this morning, I was counseling a young man that's a seminary student at Dallas Theological Seminary, and we were on the phone together. And he's making decisions for life. He's 23 years of age. He's in his master's program for seminary, and he's really concerned about discipling young adults that have been misdiscipled and have been failed in discipleship. And he's at a point of crisis because he's got 4 different directions that he could go. And he's got to make a decision soon. And he's right now at the investigation stage. But he said, this is kind of difficult because if I go this way, it means this. If I do this, it means this. I said, you got the freedom to fail. None of those are bad decisions. But you've got to make the decision that's best for you right now. Maybe you're going to come back to another decision later, but what's right for you right now? Now, one of those decisions means that he's giving birth to a new organization. Well, at 23 years of age, does he really want to give birth to an organization? If he goes another direction, he could become a very good speaker, but he could be limited in what he could say. You've got the freedom to fail. Failure is not a negative term if you're looking at it in perspective of what God wants you to do. So to leaders, I say, look at everything you do. You got the freedom to fail. If you don't do it quite right, tweak it and do it again. You will learn from not getting quite where you wanted to be. And there's things in my life that have not gone as I planned, and I'm still working on them and tweaking them. Some people say, well, give that one up, put that to bed. That's over. That's a death. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's a timing of issues. Maybe it's learning from the circumstances of one decision that leads to the other. But you as an individual have the freedom to fail. Accept that freedom and then stretch yourself to believe for things you maybe could not do. I think you're going to be a lot better off. And freedom is not a negative experience, or failure is not negative if you see it correctly. So I really want people to have the freedom to fail. You will do a lot better at it.
Absolutely. I love it. So I have an illustration. Today, I went to the gym. I was with my trainer, and my trainer said, I want you to push yourself to the point of failure. And he smiled. He said, I know failure, everybody talks about it as negative. He said, but for us, when you push yourself to the point of failure, that's showing growth. That means that you're causing yourself to become stronger than you were just a minute before. And I said, wow. And it actually motivated me as I was picking up the weights and I was doing my exercises. And so, to our viewers and listeners, we want to remind you that fear will shrink your world. It's going to hold you back, but giving expands it. Every time you give intentionally to yourself and to others, to the environment, to the world around you, you reclaim territory that fear tried to steal. I want you listeners and viewers right now in the comment section, go ahead and put hashtag reclaim. Larry and I are inviting you to reclaim your territory that fear right now is trying to steal from you. And we want to invite you to ask yourself this question: what's one way that you can give time, attention, kindness, or resources that help you move past fear this week? This week, we're always about forward movement. So if you recognize there is a fear factor in your life, you want to ask yourself, how can you give that will help you move past that fear this week? So, Larry, this comes to my mind as we're having this conversation. So from your perspective, how can a leader find a genuine, lasting purpose? We talked about purpose earlier. How can we find a genuine, lasting purpose in life?
I think we're trying to find too often purpose in our culture. I believe you got to find purpose in what God's word says to you. I'm a very strong faith believer. I believe the scripture is really an ordained or a God-given tool. And I believe that going back to scripture is where everybody's going to find real purpose. My purpose in life is to steward what God gave to me. Now that may seem like, oh, what he's getting so spiritual there. No, I'm saying God created me to take care of stuff. If you go back to the story of Adam and Eve, if you want to go back clear to Genesis, you'll see that God placed Adam and Eve in a garden. It was the biggest estate of Rhode Island. It wasn't a small place by any means, but he said, take care of my stuff. And that is what they were assigned to do. Now they blew it. In chapter 3 of the Old Testament book of Genesis, there is a failure because they became self-serving and they started taking care of themselves rather than doing what God had ordained them to do. And the consequences of that is they started making independent decisions of God's direction. But I really do believe that it's very important that if I realize that I'm here only as a steward and I implement that through job descriptions and other things that may come to me, man, we've got a world of opportunities ahead of us here, because if I am a steward, everything that I do is on behalf of somebody else. A steward by title is one who manages the affairs of somebody else. That's what the word means. So if you're on an airplane, you're going to see stewards and stewardesses. They're managing the affairs of United or Delta or Lufthansa or whatever the title is. They're managing to keep people safe and secure in their seats while this massive machine costing millions of dollars takes them someplace else. You may think they're just being nice to you, but they've got a job description to keep you in your seat and keep you calm. Because the worst thing that could happen is chaos on the airplane at 30,000 feet in the air. So the steward is taking care of the Delta or Lufthansa flight to make sure it lands. That's what they're assigned to do. And they're being paid to fly on that airplane. And they're paid to walk up and down the aisle and give you coffee or drinks and other things. Why? It keeps you in your seat and it keeps you from being nervous. But they are stewarding the responsibility of caring for that airplane. In the serfdom days of years ago, the steward was the one that managed the property and the affairs of the landholder. And they did all the accounting. So the word of stewardship a lot of times fits into the terms of accounting. They managed the staff. They managed the people. They took care of everything on a manor house property, a large estate. They didn't own anything, but they managed everything. And that is really what we have in our mind. So when I realize that every day I'm a steward of today, and I implement that in a lot of different ways, my life can be full of joy in the midst of chaos because I'm stewarding what God wanted me to do. So, even when I wrote the book, Intentional Living and Giving, Adrienne, the whole purpose was to help people realize that they really are stewards. There's 5 key principles to it, and people can get the book and see all those principles. The book is in 2 parts. One is to unpack what a steward really is and what responsibilities you've got. And the second half, if you've just chosen to become and what I call an authorized wealth distributor, then how do I live that way? How do I live every day? What kind of decisions do I make? How do I practically live out that lifestyle? And I think when people start to come to grips that they are here for a purpose and it's not by mistake, you may change jobs per se periodically. I changed jobs 5 or 6 times when I was in full-time ministry work. And then I changed jobs over 30 years when I was a consultant, slightly different change, helping people. Sometimes as a coach and a mentor. Sometimes I was a pusher and a shover. Sometimes I had to be the hard guy that told the president that he was in the wrong job. That was my job, but it changed by the circumstances, but I was still stewarding the gifting that God had given to me. And I was fulfilling my purpose every day. I've fulfilled it since the day I started realizing that is why Larry's here.
I love that. I love that.
When you know why you're here, bumps of the road are not going to throw you for a curve.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so as we reflect on what Larry just shared with us, ask yourself this question: how can I bring intention and presence to where I already am? So many times we think about we look at the future about where we're going, but we have to appreciate where we are right now. How can you bring intention and presence to where you are right now? So Larry, you talked about your book and you've mentioned the book, Intentional Living and Giving. Let me ask you this. If you had to pick one lesson from Intentional Living and Giving that has more than any other made a lasting impact on your life, what lesson would this be?
Realizing that I have the capacity to be empowered by God's Spirit Himself. In chapter 9 of the book, I go through what I learned I was a junior at the University of Colorado, and I learned these lessons from 2 engineering students, and I was a theater arts major. But these guys were enthused about their personal faith, and they started telling me how they had tapped into the Spirit of God, letting them really guide their life. And if people could tap into the power of God working through their life, it's not difficult, but it also takes a willingness to let somebody else move in and lead. It is transformational in what happens to you. My life was transformed as a junior. I wanted to get out of school as soon as I could after I started figuring that out, because I had purpose for the first time, and it wasn't to go on stage. And for 5 years, I thought I was going to be into either theater arts in New York or Hollywood. I just knew I was aiming that direction. That is not where God took me. But when I started to realize I could be empowered every day, every moment by a direction of the Spirit of God, my life changed. There is a spiritual dynamic to life that we cannot get away from. Pascal, the famous philosopher, said there's a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every man, and that can only be filled by the person of Jesus Christ and the Spirit of God. So, after all the years of being an atheist and an agnostic, he in his later years, he said, the heart-shaped vacuum in my life can be filled by one puzzle piece. And it's not by fitting something else in there. It's got to be God Himself. So, I believe, don't go through life trying to do without God. Just accept that. Let it happen. And when you do that, empowerment comes in the most unusual ways. And we're all different. So we're going to do applications of this is going to be different for you, and it's different from me. But it doesn't mean we're on the same track. So I'm really strong in take the leap and find out what really life is all about. It's a spiritual dynamic that I think many people are missing. You don't need to wander aimlessly and hope that it's going to come out in the end well.
I love this. Take the leap. That's right. It's another hashtag. Take the leap. I love it. Larry is dropping some serious gems today. All right. So Larry, as we turn the corner, I want to ask you this question. What would you say to the leader that's listening right now? If you only had 30 seconds, what would you say to the leader that's listening right now in 30 seconds to help this leader get on track and begin heading towards a fulfilled life?
Okay. I want them to be intentional, and that's a choice. You don't have to be intentional in life. You can just let life run you. Be intentional in where you're going with life, and then make choices based on that intentionality. I think if you choose to do those kind of things, you're just going to start to see God do really great things in your life. I also believe that you've got to make a choice that you choose to thrive rather than survive. There's a goal to it, and sometimes your thriving may have some hiccups. But if you're choosing every day to thrive rather than just survive, I think you're going to find that God is going to honor that choice. So the choices that we make at the very beginning of every day are going to make us or break us. If we do not acknowledge who is in charge, we're going to have trouble. If we do not choose to thrive today, that's a choice. Mm-hmm. I could just end up wasting the whole day. Now, we could blame it on, well, I want to be still and know that I'm God. Yes, I believe we need to be still, but can you blow a whole day and be so quiet you don't know where it's at? One of my friends years ago used to go on silent retreats for 3 full days where she would not talk. Mm-hmm. I admire that, but that'd be difficult for me. I could maybe do 3 hours and I'd have to come up for air and say hi to somebody. But sometimes the disciplines that we have need to be there. If you are having trouble listening, then say, I'm going to schedule 3 days or 3 hours. Just take 3 hours, for example. And just say, I'm going to not listen to a radio. I'm not going to listen to a podcast. I'm not going to answer my phone. I'm going to be saying, God, what do you want to teach me? What do you want me to do? Now, I don't think God's going to come through an audible voice and just shake your rafters with a loud boom. But I think in his way, he's going to start dealing with your heart, and he's going to start leading you in a direction. And then you've got to make a choice. Do I want to follow what he's leading me to do? Mm-hmm. You know, life is not lived at Disneyland. Mm-hmm. And I think many people go to the Disneyland culture thinking that must be perfect life. That's not life. That's a fake. It's a fake because you're on the top of a cake, basically, at Disneyland. You don't see what happens under the first floor or the top floor. You're walking to the top floor. There's layers underneath you that make Disneyland work. And life is not Disneyland. Life is lived when there's hard things to deal with deaths and families, with bitter divorces, with circumstances and jobs that throw you for a loop, with houses burning down and kids getting sick. Are you letting those experiences teach you what he wants you to learn from those experiences? Let God do a little bit of leading. Just give him the wheel of the car and let him do a little bit of driving for you.
I love this. I love this. And I think we can end on this reflection for our listeners and viewers. And here's the reflection. What's one area of your life or leadership where you want to live and give with more intention this week? Larry has walked us from A to Z. He's given us areas that we need to look at, do assessment. He has motivated, encouraged, inspired us to more purposeful living, to stop and lean on our faith, and to have stillness. So what are you going to do with all of this? Those of us who are listening and watching right now, what are we going to do with this? It's our call to commitment. Take a moment and reflect. What's an area of your life or areas of your life or leadership where you want to live and give with more intention? And then take the next step to actually think and write down, what does that next step look like? You have to see it. You got to see it and then go ahead and do it. Larry, this has been amazing. I really have enjoyed this conversation this leadership conversation that we've had today. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are listeners and that there are viewers that absolutely want to reach out to you. Now, you talked to us a little bit. You mentioned kind of about the book. And can you share with us 2 things? One, if somebody wants to reach out to you, how can they do that? And 2, talk to us a little bit about the resources that you have available.
Well, they can reach out to me through my email address, just larry@larryo.com. If I see your email come through, I'll engage with you. I don't, unless I feel like a spam. So, hey, I just heard you on Adrienne's show. I mean, just something like that so that I know where it came from. LarryOnan.com is where I kind of put a lot of stuff. There's even things for your listeners and viewers. If you go to LarryOnan.com, you're going to find a personal stewardship inventory that's free for your taking. It's a assessment of your life. and it's going to grade you on how you're doing in your personal stewardship. And it's going to give you 3 chapters of the Intentional Living and Giving book that you can dive in and begin first getting that. Now, you can find the book at Barnes & Noble. You can find it at any place that sells books. Amazon is probably the most popular worldwide way, and it's available there. But if you wanted a signed copy, you got to go to larryonan.com. And every book I send out from my own inventory, I'll sign it. And there's 2 or 3 free things with that I give you to help you become the authorized wealth distributor that's talked about. So there's freebies with the book. There's the book. There's personal stewardship inventory. The inventory, you don't have to communicate to me, but it helps you define where you're strong and where you're weak in your role as a steward. And then it tells you what to basically do, and assessment leads to a few action points. I would advise everybody to say, write down 5 things that you will do. I will. 5 of them. Operate by about 12 to 15 of these. Here's the principle. If it's not in writing, it does not exist. Think about it. When you write it down, it gives you a chance to edit and change what you wrote. If it's just in your brain, you're going to forget it. When you write it down, you can hold yourself accountable to it. As an example, I will spend quality time with 6 grandkids in 2025 or 2026. Okay, I will. That means I've got to work on spending time with a 23-year-old and a year-old.
Yes.
And it's very different, but I'm choosing to influence their lives, so I will find ways to do that. If I don't write it down, I can go a whole year and not have a meaningful conversation with those 6 kids. I will choose to get up every morning, ask God, what is there for me to do that you've got planned for me? I'm doing that because I'm recognizing He's in control. Just write down 5 I wills for the day, and if you can for a week, and then add them to a month, and add them to a year, and edit them. It's okay to edit your I wills. You need to start taking responsibility, and the I wills help you do that. If it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. So put it in writing.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, this has been amazing. You have charged our viewers and listeners, to everyone in our community. We want to support Larry. We want to go ahead and tap into the resources. You see the link on the screen. It's also in the description box. Please, as he already mentioned, go ahead and contact him and let him know that you saw this episode. Let Larry know what resonated with you, and continue to ask questions, because we are a community that loves learning and loves growing. Larry, again, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, Adrienne. Thanks for giving yourself away through this podcast. Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. Well, there you have it. Listen, here's the truth. Leadership that's intentional leaves a legacy that lasts. And when we live on purpose, we give purpose. And that creates ripple effects far beyond titles or timelines. If today's episode inspired you, share it with another leader who's ready to move from autopilot to intentional impact. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to Transformation Station on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, so you never miss our Monday and Wednesday leadership episodes. Because we're transformation, we don't just talk about it, we actually live it. So until next time, lead intentionally, give generously, and keep on transforming.